same place. Okay, so that just kind of verified that for us there. Yep. Okay, so let's get all of this stuff onto a graph. Try and make mine as pretty as I can for you here. All right, let's see. Okay, so quickly get this all numbered up here. Okay, so we've got vertical asymptotes at -3 and at 1. Okay, so -3. And at 1. No horizontal asymptotes, so I don't got to worry about that. X-intercepts, -2, 0, 2. And the y-intercept is already on there too. So, okay. So, let's take a look at this thing one piece at a time. Do you see how there are going to be 3 chunks to this thing? There are 3 different pieces. How do I know there are going to be 3 pieces to this thing? Yeah. Right. We have those 2 asymptotes which break it into 3 pieces. So there's going to be a piece over here somewhere, a piece caught in the middle, and a piece over here. Okay? So start with that. Use those vertical asymptotes to break it into however many chunks you have, and then kind of think about one at a time. And if you're like me, I like to just go left to right, or start with the chunk that has the most information if you'd rather do that. Okay? So maybe let's just do that. Let's start with the one that seems like we've got the most to go on, which would probably be the middle one, right? We've got these 2 points in here that it has to cross. We've got these 2 vertical asymptotes. So start trying to picture in your head, how could this go? Okay? There are really 2 possibilities, right? Without creating any more asymptotes, or any more intercepts, you could either have like a parabola-looking type thing that comes down, crosses here, and comes back up through there like that, or one that comes up through -2 and back down through 0 and goes down. Okay? And so then the question becomes, how do I know which way it's going to go? Yeah? Because the up because it's positive? Not necessarily. It's not like a regular quadratic. Okay, with quadratics we could do that. We said, oh, if the leading term is positive, it's going to open up. If the leading term is negative, it's going to open down. With these guys, all that kind of stuff goes right out the window, unfortunately. So really the only way to know is to test a point. Plug in a number and see what happens. Okay? So like, for example, in this interval, what do you think would be a good number to plug in to give us a sense of what's going on? -1. Okay. So I'm going to just hop over to the side here. If I plug in a -1 into the function, let's see what I get. So I get -1 cubed, which is -1, minus 4 times -1. So that's going to be -1 plus 4, so that's 3 on top. And then on the bottom, -1 squared is 1. It would be -2 minus 3. So 1 minus 2 is -1, minus 3 is -4. So I get 3 over -4. So that tells me that this point is going to be about -3/4. So somewhere like there. So now tell me, does it open up or open down? Definitely has to open up then, right? Okay. So it's going to look something like that. Okay, it's going to approach those two vertical asymptotes, has to hit all three of those points. We've got the middle piece done. Okay, let's jump over to the right. I know that this thing has to go through 2, and I know that it's going to have to approach this vertical asymptote somehow. So there are 2 possibilities here as well. Okay, it could come up through 2 towards the vertical asymptote that way, or it could come down through 2 towards the vertical asymptote that way. Okay, and again, how do we know? Well, we could try a point again, plug something in and test it out and see where it goes, and then connect the dots together that way. Since we're at the end, though, over here, we could take a look at some end behavior stuff. Okay. Now, if you guys want to just keep plugging in the points, don't want to worry about end behavior, that's totally fine. But it is another way to kind of quickly analyze things. So I'll kind of show you both ways here. So remember when we talked about end behavior and we said that you really only need to look at the first term for both, right? So if I just focus on the first terms of each, x to the third over x squared, what does that simplify to if I divide those two? Just x, right? Which means as this function goes to infinity, it should be going to infinity, right? As x goes to infinity, y should go to infinity. Okay? So it's going to be heading up like this, which means there's only one way this thing can go then, right? If it's heading up as it goes to infinity, it's going to have to come down through this point, approach the asymptote that way. Okay? Or, like we did before, you could just say, all right, I'm going to test 3. Plug in a 3 and see what happens. Okay? And what you're going to find is when you plug in a 3, you're going to get a positive number. And that tells you then, okay, I got to connect it that way, so it has to be going this same direction. So this piece, either way we slice it, it's going to look like that. So now we've got that part done. And then there's this third piece over on the left-hand side, which seems a little problematic again, because there's no intercepts past -3. So it's never going to cross the x-axis over here. Okay, so what could be happening then? How could I have a piece over here that never actually crosses the x-axis? What would it have to look like? It's got to approach that vertical asymptote somehow, right? So either it's going to go up the asymptote or it's going to go down the asymptote. So let's just assume for right now it goes up the asymptote. Okay? So if it's going up the asymptote, then the other side of it can't come down and cross this. So it would have to come down, turn around, and go back up. Or, because there's no horizontal asymptote. If there was, then yes, it would have to level off and do that. But there's no horizontal asymptote, so it would come down, turn around, and head up. Or, could happen the same way underneath, right? It could be approaching this asymptote going down like that. So this piece would come up, turn around, and then head down like that. Okay? And we can approach this using the end behavior stuff again if we'd like. Okay? We know, again, we just focus on these first 2 terms, and we end up with x. So as x approaches -infinity, what happens to y with just x? -infinity. So which of those 2 is it going to have to be? Is it caught above or caught below? It's going to have to be that one that's below. So it's going to have a look that is something like this. So it's going to come up, it's going to approach that asymptote, but then it's going to head off and head down towards negative infinity. Now, we don't know precisely like how far down this thing is, right? I mean, it could be like way down here, and we don't even know. Okay? So this is just a sketch. It's just I know it's not going to cross the x-axis, but it's going to have this kind of a shape over here somewhere. Okay? So if you were to actually like plug in points, like a -4, you know, it might, the way that I have it graphed here, it looks like this thing comes up to like -1, -2, but it very well could be like -30 or something. We don't know. Okay? But the point is, we've got the basic shape of the thing sketched out, though. That's what I'm going for with this stuff. Okay? So you know exactly what the shape of it is, where it might not be like precisely lining up the way that you did it. Okay? But let's take a look anyway. Let's see what we get when we graph this thing on the calculator and see how much or how closely it matches what we had. So we had x to the third minus 4x on top, and then divided by x squared plus 2x minus 3. And I'm going to go ahead and make my window just a little bigger. I'll go out to 5s. And let's see what we get. Okay, so I got that typed in. Made my window from -5 to 5 each way, and let's just see what we get. All right, so how'd we do? Not too shabby, right? At least with those two pieces. Now, like I said, that third piece, it's probably just really, really low. If you bring it out to 10, you can see it. Okay, let's do that real quick. Yeah, see the little piece of it there? Yep, so we got the shape of that other little piece correct. It was just, you know, shuffled down a little further than we thought, but that's okay. That's fine. Okay? So, what I'm going to have you guys doing is a lot of practice with this kind of stuff, okay? Where you take a rational function, come up with the vertical, horizontal asymptotes, x and y intercepts, and try to piece together a graph. And it's going to take a little bit of problem solving, a little bit of guess and check, plug in some numbers, think in behavior. Okay, it's not always the same exact story for every single one of them, but you're going to try and piece it together the best that you can. And really be thinking in your head, based on what you see, what are the possibilities? Which way could it go without creating a new intercept or some new asymptote that wasn't there to begin with? Okay. After you do a few of them, you'll start to kind of get in the groove a little bit, and it'll make some more sense for you. But I got a little worksheet for you guys to practice with that. Once you're done with that worksheet, then you guys can start your homework today.